Well, this year we are introducing a new tool to our Kansas State Ag Econ department. It's called the Crop Budget and Leasing Tool. And this is designed to replace the individual Excel crop budgets that we have used in years past. They are now all combined into this tool. And it also replaces much of the functionality of the KSU lease, I think in a much easier tool. Certainly there's much less inputs of things you have to put into it. It may not have quite the full capabilities of KSU lease, but it should come pretty close. And I think you'll find that this version is actually fairly easy to use. So again, I want to explain why we're doing this and give you kind of a brief overview. In a series of video instructional materials, I'm going to cover really 5 things. I'm going to give you a general overview in this particular video. Then I'll show you how you can compare share and cash leases. And then I'll show you how to create a new budget from an existing budget. Then we'll talk about how to run simulations and then how to interpret the results from the budget and leasing tool. One of my main reasons for actually changing this tool in the first place was because our individual Excel crop budgets we used last year, they got to a point where they were becoming very brittle. That is, it didn't take much to actually break them and cause a whole lot of troubles if things weren't inputted in exactly the right format and the right order and stuff. So when I made the change to the budgets this year to incorporate own machinery ownership as opposed to using custom rates, I thought this was a good time to go back and also revisit how we did the Excel versions. And I think you'll find that there's some advantages to what we have. I may not have quite the functionality in what I had before last year, but I did add some new things, and eventually I will probably have this new tool up to par to what the old one was. So let's go ahead and in this brief overview kind of look at the different parts of the lease simulation tool. So one nice thing about this tool is I have developed a lot of documentation into it already, as opposed to my crop budget tool, which still has the documentation remain to be added to it. But if you open it up to the very first introduction tab here at the bottom, you will see that here's the basic directions of how to use it and what some of the things have. I'm calling it kind of a beta version right at the moment yet, because the flex lease part of the simulation probably could stand for a little more testing just to make sure it does always fully match up with what KSU lease has and make sure that the flex lease is working correctly. But the basic budgeting part of it and looking at share leases versus cash leases should be pretty strong. And I think even the Monte Carlo part will work correctly as well. I should tell you a couple of caveats though for this, because the way Excel works and the way it does simulation is that this thing will run much quicker if you have all other Excel spreadsheets closed, because whenever that it recalculates during a Monte Carlo simulation run, it basically has to recalculate everything. There's really no way in Excel to change that. So whatever spreadsheet you have open will be recalculated at the same time as trying to recalculate this. So you can include and increase the functionality and speed by making sure all other spreadsheets closed. Now, saying that, if everything else is closed and you have a fairly modern computer, when you do the simulation, it'll go through 200 iterations of looking at different situations, and it should run within probably about 10 or 15 seconds. Excel is kind of hard to tell exactly when it's done, so I had a little window pop up that shows you when the simulation is actually done. So don't get too anxious to click on another button while the simulation is running. All right, so again, there's this introduction tab that goes along with some of the basic directions. And then we have a budget tab, which is where you probably spend most of your time, because this is where you will actually go through and actually bring your budgets into play and do the comparisons. And I'll come back and talk with this one here in a second when we run through the rest of the tabs. Then we have an output tab where the results of the simulation are shown. We have a flex lease tab where you can input information about the correlations between the yields and prices for a crop, and then within the correlations for if you have multiple crops involved for this. And here's some information then we enter for the different flex leases. Again, we'll have a separate video about the flex lease part of it. And then we also have, here's the raw data that goes into this. So what you're looking at right now in this red box is you are seeing all the pre-existing crop budgets that have been pre-entered in kind of in a raw data format. Right now you see we have 52 budgets that fit into place here. So this is just here just to have the data in case you would have to ever make a change or delete something, you can kind of do it from here. Although I don't really think you'll have to really work with this page a whole lot, but this is just here to see where all the numbers go. And then I think this part here, most of you guys will like, is you can actually add now new budgets. If you take an existing budget and make some modifications to it, you can actually add that as a new budget into your budget list. And again, there'll be a separate video instructional part talking about how to do that, but it's a fairly simple process. All right, let's take a look about the very first budget page and how you would use that, because again, this is where you will spend most of your time. But first, I should mention that this page is documented, and you can see these little red triangles tell you that there's a note hidden behind these. When you click on that and on that cell, and you'll notice a little pop-up menu shows you exactly what explains what's going on there. Now, the nice thing is you can actually hide and show all these all at once if you kind of want to get an interactive documentation by clicking on this button right here where it says hide and show all comments. If you click on that, you'll notice now all the hidden documentation post-it things now all pop up, and you can see what everything does. And this explains what most of these things actually do in the process for this thing. So let me go ahead and hide these back again. I'll kind of continue with my explanation. But again, the basic idea here is you can enter stuff in the blue cells, and anything else should be calculated. This sheet is actually protected, which will keep you from trying to enter something here. If you click here and try to key a number in, you'll get a message just saying you can't do that. So some protection going on. Again, you should be able to make changes in the blue cell. Also notice, to make things easy to follow across, is I have implemented a macro that whenever you click on a cell, it will put this red underline to kind of show you exactly which row you're on. I kind of found that a big advantage when I was working on this, especially when you get several columns to maybe look across. Is just by clicking on a new cell, you will get this red underline that will help you trace your way across when you look at numbers and such. All right, so the first thing you probably want to do with this is you probably want to add some budgets to look at. And right now, you can see I have one budget that I'm currently looking at, and it's the wheat for North Central Kansas rotation budget. Well, if you want to look at a different budget, you can basically come up here to the top and click on this cell. And you notice here as you do that, this little pop-up menu shows up with this little triangle. And this is really a drop-down box to actually select the budget you want to look at. So now that I've selected this cell, there's this little triangle over here. I click on that little triangle, and now you have available to you all the different budgets that we already have pre-generated in this. Also, and you can also see there's some empty space here at the end for other new budgets. Well, if you want to pick a different budget, let's say you want to look at maybe corn North Central, you would basically click here, and now you notice that the budget has changed, and basically the raw numbers from the budget will flow into here. Now this budget format is slightly different than the budget format that's in the PDF files. The main difference is I have taken all the what used to be diesel fuel and labor and repair and maintenance. Now they basically have been summarized at this individual kind of subcategory level. So within machinery, I have something for harvesting. So all those harvesting costs, variable costs show up here. And then I've separated those into the fixed and variable, and the fixed costs, which would be the depreciation and interest charge, they show up down on this side here. But again, it's the same, you end up with the same bottom line number you had before. And my plan is eventually to change that budgeting tool to actually have a format like this one here as well. So assuming you like all the numbers, you can go ahead and keep it like it is, and it will tell you your return over direct expenses, return over all expenses here, and then we'll show you a break-even price and a break-even yield. Now, if you don't like the particular number in here, this is what's nice about this tool is you can change it pretty easily. So if you don't like the $62.96, maybe you want to put in $70, you can change it like that. And that then will automatically change all the following numbers here. So it will recalculate the direct expenses and change you the return over direct expenses, return over all costs right there. So that's the way you would use that. If you want to add another budget to compare, you go ahead and select it, and maybe you want to look at a soybeans for North Central. You can add that in there, and now you can do a comparison between budgets to see what those look like. And again, you can make changes just like you had before. And then the other part of this tool is that you can look at this as a way to looking at a piece of land you're maybe considering renting or buying and looking at the effects of crop rotation, because you can incorporate fallow acres here and acres that are double cropped, and that will change your total number of tillable acres like that. So this tool is really designed to look at really one set of properties that are all in have similar productivity, because the cash rent really applies to all crop acres across here. So we're not looking at a case where you have some real high productive land and low productive land, kind of looking at those like that. We're looking at kind of maybe the crop rotation you would have on a similar piece of property. In that case, one cash rent would apply to all those acres like that. So this kind of concludes our introduction for this. In my next video lecture, I will go through and talk about doing the share leasing versus cash leases, because you'll notice here as I fill this in, I get numbers over here show up in my cash lease and my share lease side here. But I'm just kind of showing you right now the introduction for this and how you would incorporate looking at two different budgets, which I think would be of interest to a lot of folks here, something that's a little tougher to do just from the PDF side of things. So that will conclude our introduction to this crop budgeting and leasing tool.